I thought saving $10,000 would be the hardest part. I was wrong. The hardest part was watching my own mother spend every penny of it without asking, then look me straight in the eye and call me selfish for being upset about it. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss.
My name is Jessica Caldwell, and until 6 months ago, I believed that hard work and family loyalty would always pay off. I was 24, living in Toledo, Ohio, working 2 jobs and barely sleeping 4 hours a night, all for a dream that seemed just within reach. It started on a Tuesday morning in March when I got the acceptance letter. After 3 years of applications and rejections, the Cleveland Institute of Culinary Arts had finally said yes to my pastry program application. The tuition was steep, exactly $9,800 for the intensive 6-month course that would give me the credentials I needed to open my own bakery. I'd been dreaming of that bakery since I was 12 years old, mixing cookie dough in my grandmother's kitchen. The problem was money. I was making $14 an hour at Murphy's Diner during the day, serving coffee and flipping pancakes to truckers and office workers. It barely covered my rent for the tiny studio apartment I shared with my cat Whiskers, and my portion of groceries. My evening job at Riverside Mall, folding clothes at Fashion Forward for $12 an hour, helped with utilities and gas money, but there was never anything left over. When that acceptance letter arrived, I knew I had 4 months to somehow scrape together nearly $10,000. Most people would have laughed at the impossibility of it, but I wasn't most people. I was Rebecca Caldwell's daughter, and she'd raised me to believe that anything was possible if you worked hard enough for it. I sat down that night with a calculator, a notepad, and a determination that surprised even me. If I picked up every available shift at both jobs, worked 7 days a week without a single day off, and lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches, I could save about $2,400 a month. It would be brutal, but it was mathematically possible. The next morning, I marched into Murphy's Diner and asked my manager, Carl, if there were any extra shifts available. Carl was a gruff man in his 50s who'd been running that diner since before I was born, but he had a soft spot for hardworking employees. "You sure about this, Jessica? You're already pulling 6 days a week here," he said, wiping down the coffee machine with a stained towel. "I need to save money for culinary school, Carl. I'll take any shifts you've got." He studied my face for a moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. Danny's been calling in sick more often lately anyway. You can cover his Sunday shifts, and if you want, there's some prep work available before we open. You'd have to be here by 5 a.m., though." 5 a.m. and getting up for 4:15, but I didn't hesitate. "I'll take it." At Fashion Forward, my supervisor Amanda was equally accommodating when I explained my situation. She was a woman in her 30s who'd worked her way up from sales associate to store manager, and she understood ambition. "We've got inventory coming up, and corporate's been pushing for extended hours anyway," she said, flipping through the scheduling book. "I can give you closing shifts Tuesday through Thursday and weekend inventory work. It'll mean some 11-hour days between your 2 jobs, but if you're up for it, I'm up for it." And so began what I now think of as the hardest 4 months of my life. My alarm went off at 4:15 a.m. every single day. I'd stumble to the shower, throw on my Murphy's Diner uniform, a yellow polo shirt that had seen better days, and black pants that were permanently stained with various food items, and drive through the empty streets of Toledo to start prep work. Those early morning hours became oddly peaceful. Carl would unlock the door for me, grunt a greeting, and leave me alone in the kitchen to prep vegetables, mix batter for pancakes, and set up the coffee station. The diner was quiet, except for the hum of refrigerators and the occasional car passing by outside. I'd put in my earbuds and listen to podcasts about entrepreneurship and small business management while I chopped onions and grated cheese. By 6 a.m., the breakfast rush would begin. Toledo might not be a big city, but Murphy's Diner had a loyal following of construction workers, nurses getting off night shifts, and early commuters who needed their coffee fix. I would spend the next 6 hours taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and dodging Carl's increasingly creative swear words when the grill got backed up. The transition between jobs became a carefully choreographed dance. I'd clock out at Murphy's at 2 p.m., drive home as fast as legally possible, change into my fashion-forward uniform, a crisp white button-down and navy pants, grab a protein bar for lunch, and be at the mall by 2:45 for my 3 p.m. shift. Fashion-forward was a different kind of exhausting. Where Murphy's was fast-paced and chaotic, the retail job was a slow burn of difficult customers, endless clothing racks to organize, and the mind-numbing repetition of folding these same shirts over and over.
But the evening shifts paid slightly better, and Amanda often let me stay late to help with inventory, which meant overtime pay. My feet ached constantly. I went through 3 pairs of work shoes in 4 months because I was literally wearing the soles off of them. My hands were permanently dry and cracked from washing dishes and handling clothing tags. I lost 12 pounds without trying because I was often too tired to eat proper meals. But every 2 weeks, when those paychecks hit my bank account, I felt a surge of pride that kept me going. I opened a separate savings account that I nicknamed Bakery Fund and watched the balance creep upward. $847, $1,283, $2,156, $3,401. Each deposit felt like a small victory. My social life completely disappeared. Friends stopped inviting me to things because they knew I'd be working. I missed birthdays, barbecues, and movie nights. My phone collected dust except for work-related calls and the occasional check-in from my mom. Mom was proud of my work ethic, or so she said. Rebecca Caldwell had raised me and my younger brother Marcus as a single mother after our dad left when I was 8. She worked as a dental hygienist and had always emphasized the importance of education and self-reliance. When I told her about culinary school, she'd been supportive but realistic about the financial challenge. "Just don't burn yourself out, honey," she'd say when I'd call her after particularly brutal days. "Your health is more important than any school." But I couldn't slow down. Every day I didn't work double shifts was a day further from my goal. I calculated and recalculated obsessively. If I got sick and missed even 3 shifts, I'd fall short. If my car broke down and I had to pay for repairs, I'd fall short. The margin for error was non-existent. By June, I was running on pure determination and caffeine. I'd developed a twitch in my left eye from exhaustion, and I'd started having vivid stress dreams about giant coffee pots chasing me through endless clothing racks. But my savings account balance was approaching $7,000, and for the first time, culinary school felt real and achievable. The hardest part wasn't even the physical exhaustion, it was the isolation. I had always been close with my family, especially my mom and my cousin Riley Patterson, who was 2 years younger than me. Riley had been like a sister growing up since she lived just 3 blocks away with my Aunt Sharon. We'd spent summers together, shared secrets, and supported each other through breakups and disappointments. But as my work schedule consumed my life, I barely saw anyone anymore. I missed Riley's graduation party in May because I was working a double shift. I missed Marcus's baseball games because I was either at the diner or at the mall. I even missed Mother's Day dinner because Fashion Forward was having a major sale and needed all hands on deck. Each missed event stung, but I told myself it was temporary. 6 months of sacrifice for a lifetime of doing what I loved, that seemed like a fair trade. In early July, something shifted. Maybe it was seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, or maybe I was just getting used to the brutal schedule, but I started feeling optimistic again. My savings account had crossed $8,500, and I was ahead of my projected timeline. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to daydream about pastry techniques and cake decorating while I worked. I even started making plans beyond culinary school. I researched commercial kitchen rental rates in Toledo, looked at potential locations for a bakery, and sketched out business plans on napkins during my brief breaks at Murphy's. Carl caught me drawing floor plans for a hypothetical bakery one afternoon and shook his head with what might have been admiration. "You're really gonna do this, aren't you?" he said, refilling my coffee cup.
Yeah, I am. Well, when you open that fancy bakery of yours, you better remember us little people, he said with a rare smile. Those small moments of encouragement kept me going when everything else felt impossible. Amanda at Fashion Forward started saving pastry magazines for me that customers left behind. Even some of the regular customers at Murphy's began asking about my progress and offering words of support. But it was the balance in my savings account that spoke loudest. By late July, I had $9,247 saved. I was so close, I could taste it, almost literally. In just a few more weeks, I'd have enough money to pay for culinary school, maybe even with a small buffer for textbooks and supplies. I remembered the exact moment I hit $10,000. It was a Thursday evening in early August, and I was closing at Fashion Forward. Amanda had given me extra hours to help with back-to-school inventory, and when I checked my banking app during my break, there it was, $10,127. I stared at the screen for a full minute, hardly believing it was real. 4 months of double shifts, of aching feet and exhaustion, of missing every social event and family gathering, it had all been worth it. I had actually done it. I called in sick to Murphy's the next day, the first sick day I'd taken in 4 months, and spent the afternoon at home with Whiskers, researching Cleveland neighborhoods and planning my new life. I even allowed myself the luxury of ordering pizza instead of making another peanut butter sandwich. The culinary school had given me until August 20th to submit my tuition payment for the September semester. I was 2 weeks early and had a small cushion for emergencies. Everything was falling into place perfectly. I should have known that when things seem too good to be true, they usually are. The phone call came on a Saturday morning while I was finally enjoying my first real weekend in months. I'd allowed myself to sleep until 9 a.m., a luxury that felt almost decadent after months of 4:15 alarms. Whiskers was curled up on my chest, purring contentedly, and I was scrolling through apartment listings in Cleveland when Mom's name flashed on my screen. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off.
Hey, Mom, I answered, still half asleep and completely unprepared for what was coming. Jessica, honey, I need to talk to you about something important. Her voice had that careful tone she used when she was about to deliver news she knew I wouldn't like. I sat up, disturbing Whiskers, who gave me an indignant look before relocating to the foot of the bed. What's going on? It's about Riley and David's wedding. Riley had gotten engaged to David Morrison the previous Christmas. I'd been genuinely happy for her, even though I'd only met David a handful of times due to my work schedule. He seemed nice enough, a quiet guy who worked in IT and clearly adored my cousin. They'd been planning a small ceremony for October, nothing too fancy since they were both just starting their careers. What about the wedding? I asked, though something in Mom's tone was already making my stomach clench. Well, there's been a situation with the venue. The place they booked, you remember that little hall downtown? It turns out the owner has been having financial problems. The building's going into foreclosure, and they canceled all their bookings with only 6 weeks' notice. I felt bad for Riley, but I wasn't sure why Mom was calling me about venue problems. That's awful, but surely they can find somewhere else. That's just it, honey. Everything else is either booked solid or way out of their price range. But Sharon found this beautiful country club about 40 minutes outside the city. It's perfect. Gorgeous gardens, elegant ballroom, everything Riley dreamed of. The knot in my stomach tightened. And the problem is the deposit. They need $8,500 up front to secure the booking. And with everything happening so last minute, they can't get a payment plan. Riley's been crying for 3 days straight. This wedding means everything to her, Jessica. I was quiet for a long moment, processing what I suspected was coming. Mom, where exactly is this conversation going? I know you've been saving money, sweetie, and I know how close you and Riley have always been. She's like a sister to you, and family helps family. The words hit me like a physical blow. You want me to give them my culinary school money? It's not giving, honey. It would be a loan. They'd pay you back after the honeymoon, maybe in installments. Sharon's already talked to her bank about a personal loan to reimburse you. I was fully awake now, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Mom, that money isn't just sitting there for fun. I have exactly 17 days to pay my tuition or I lose my spot in the program. I understand that, but think about this rationally. You're young, Jessica. You could reapply next year, save up again. But Riley can't reschedule her wedding date. They've already sent invitations, booked the pastor, arranged time off work. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. And culinary school isn't? Of course it is, but it's not going anywhere. There will be other semesters, other opportunities, but Riley's wedding is happening in October, whether she has the venue she wants or not. I stood up and started pacing around my small apartment, Whiskers watching me with concerned green eyes. Mom, do you have any idea what I went through to save this money? I worked 7 days a week for 4 months. I haven't had a social life. I've barely slept. I've missed every family event. I know, honey, and I'm proud of you for working so hard. That's exactly why I know you'll understand how important this is. Important to who? I've been planning this for years, Mom, years. I finally have everything lined up, and you want me to just hand it over? I want you to help your family when they need it most. That's what we do, Jessica. That's how I raised you. The guilt trip was expertly deployed, but I was too angry to fall for it completely. What about Aunt Sharon? What about Riley's parents? Why is this my responsibility? Sharon's been between jobs since her company downsized in March. And you know Riley's dad hasn't been in the picture since she was 15. They've already borrowed against Sharon's 401k just to cover the dress and catering. I stopped pacing and stared out my apartment window at the parking lot below. A couple was loading suitcases into their car, probably heading off on some weekend adventure I'd never had. Have you talked to Marcus about this? Your brother's a college student, Jessica. He doesn't have that kind of money. Neither do I. This isn't my money to loan out. It's already committed to my education. I understand you're upset, but I need you to think about what's really important here. Riley has been there for you through everything. Your breakup with Tommy, when you were struggling to figure out what to do with your life, when you were depressed after Dad left. She loves you like a sister. And I love her too, but that doesn't mean I should sacrifice my future for her wedding venue. There was a long pause, and when Mom spoke again, her voice had taken on a sharper edge. Jessica, I'm disappointed in you. I raised you to put family first, to be generous and caring. This isn't like you. Maybe because you've never asked me to give up everything I've worked for before. It's not everything. It's one semester of school that you can make up later. But if Riley has to settle for some cheap, ugly venue because her cousin wouldn't help her when she needed it most, that's something that can never be undone. I felt tears building behind my eyes, but I fought them back. I can't believe you're asking me this. I'm not asking anymore, Jessica. I'm telling you what the right thing to do is. Sharon's coming by this afternoon to pick up a check. The words stopped me cold. Excuse me? I've already told Sharon that we'd help her. She's driving up from Dayton this afternoon. Mom, you can't promise my money to other people without asking me first. I'm your mother, Jessica. I know what's best for this family, and I know what kind of person I raised you to be. The Jessica I know wouldn't hesitate to help her cousin in a situation like this. I sank down onto my couch, feeling like the walls of my tiny apartment were closing in. And if I say no, then I guess I don't know my own daughter as well as I thought I did. The manipulation was so blatant it took my breath away. This was my mother, the woman who taught me to work hard, to save money, to plan for the future, and she was asking me to throw away months of sacrifice for a party. I need time to think about this. Sharon will be here at 3 o'clock. That gives you about 4 hours. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone in disbelief. 4 hours to decide whether to give up my dream or disappoint my entire family. 4 hours to choose between my future and my cousin's perfect wedding. I called Riley directly, hoping to get her side of the story without Mom's emotional manipulation clouding the conversation. She answered on the second ring, and I could tell immediately that she'd been crying. Jess, did Aunt Rebecca talk to you? Yeah, she did. Riley, I'm so sorry about the venue situation. It's been a nightmare, she said, her voice thick with tears. We put down a deposit 6 months ago, and now it's just gone.
The owner won't return anyone's calls, and there's probably going to be a lawsuit. But that doesn't help us now. Have you looked into other options? Everything decent is either booked or costs twice what we budgeted. David's parents offered to help, but they're already paying for the honeymoon, and I can't ask them for more. Mom's been calling every venue within 50 miles, but August is apparently the worst time to be looking for an October date. I could hear the genuine distress in her voice, and it tugged at my heart. Riley had always been a romantic, the type of girl who'd been planning her wedding since we were kids, playing dress-up in Grandma's old clothes. This wasn't just about throwing a party. It was about a dream she'd held on to for years. Riley, about the money situation? Jess, I would never ask you to do this if there was any other way. I know how hard you've been working, and I know what that money means to you. But David and I are desperate, and Aunt Rebecca said you might be able to help us out temporarily. Temporarily? Mom's already applied for a personal loan to pay you back. She should hear back within a few weeks, definitely before your school starts. And if that doesn't work out, David and I will figure out a payment plan. We'll pay you back every penny with interest, I promise. I wanted to believe her, but I'd heard similar promises before. When Marcus needed money for his car repair junior year, Mom had promised to reimburse me from his part-time job. That had taken 8 months. When Aunt Sharon needed help with Riley's senior class trip, the temporary loan had never been repaid at all.
Riley, what if the loan doesn't come through? What if something happens and you can't pay me back in time? Then I'll get a second job, or we'll postpone the honeymoon, or we'll figure something else out. Jess, I swear to you, I won't let you lose your spot in culinary school because of my wedding. But you can't guarantee that. There was silence on the other end of the line. Finally, Riley spoke, her voice small and defeated. No, I can't guarantee it, but I'm asking you to trust me because I don't have anyone else to turn to. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Riley alternating between desperate pleas and promises she might not be able to keep. By the time I hung up, I felt emotionally drained and no closer to a decision. I spent the next hour researching Riley's claims about venue availability, hoping to find some alternative that would solve the problem without involving my savings. She was right. Everything decent was either booked or prohibitively expensive. The country club Mom had mentioned did look beautiful in the photos, and $8,500 for a venue that typically charged twice that was actually a reasonable deal. But reasonable for whom? Not for someone who'd already committed every penny to their education. At noon, I called the Cleveland Institute of Culinary Arts to ask about deferring my enrollment. The administrator I spoke with was sympathetic but firm. If I didn't submit my tuition payment by the deadline, my spot would go to someone on the waiting list. They couldn't hold it for me, and there was no guarantee I'd be accepted for the spring semester. We typically see about a 30% increase in applications each year. Competition is only getting tougher. My dream was slipping away, and I hadn't even made a decision yet. At 2:45, I heard Mom's car pull into the parking lot. Through my window, I could see her getting out of her silver Honda, followed by Aunt Sharon's burgundy sedan. They'd driven up together, probably strategizing on the way about how to handle my expected resistance. I opened the door before they could knock, and the first thing I noticed was that Mom had brought her checkbook. "Hi, honey," Mom said, giving me a hug that felt more like a transaction than affection. "Sharon's here to talk about the wedding situation." Aunt Sharon looked older than I remembered, stress lines etched around her eyes. "Jessica, I can't tell you how much this means to Riley. She's been beside herself about this whole venue disaster." "I know, Aunt Sharon. I talked to her this morning." "Then you understand how desperate the situation is. I've never asked for family help before, but I'm out of options." We sat down in my tiny living room, 3 women crowded onto furniture meant for one. Whiskers had wisely disappeared under the bed. "I've already talked to my bank," Sharon continued. "The loan officer says it shouldn't be a problem given my employment history and credit score. But the paperwork takes time and we need to secure this venue today or we'll lose it to another couple." "What's the exact timeline for repayment?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be vague.
The loan should be approved within 2 to 3 weeks, and then I can cut you a check immediately. And if it's not approved? Sharon and Mom exchanged a look. Then we'll figure out another solution. Maybe a payment plan, maybe borrowing from David's family. The important thing is that Riley gets her dream wedding. What about my dream? Jessica, Mom said, and her voice had that warning tone I remembered from childhood arguments. I've already written the check. All I need is your account information for the transfer. I stared at her in shock. You've already written a check for my money? I've written a check to help your cousin. Yes, because that's what family does. The presumption took my breath away. Not only had she committed my money without my final consent, she'd already made it official. In her mind, the decision was done. Mom, you can't just decide how I spend my money. I can when my daughter is being selfish and short-sighted. How is it selfish to want to go to culinary school? It's selfish to put your own wants ahead of your family's needs. This isn't a want, Mom. This is my career, my future. And Riley's wedding is her future, too. The difference is, you can always go to school later. She can't have another wedding day. I looked at Aunt Sharon, hoping for some support, but she was staring at her hands, letting Mom do the talking. She wanted my money, but she didn't want to be the one pressuring me for it. Jessica, Mom said, and her voice had that warning tone I remembered from childhood arguments. I need you to understand something. Family loyalty isn't optional. It's not something you do when it's convenient. It's something you do especially when it's hard. So I should just give up everything I've worked for? You should do the right thing for the people who love you. I felt trapped, cornered by years of family dynamics and emotional manipulation. This wasn't really about the money. It was about power, about who got to make decisions about my life and my future. But as I sat there, looking at Mom's already written check and Aunt Sharon's desperate face, I realized something important. I was 24 years old, and this was ultimately my choice to make, regardless of the pressure being applied. The silence in my living room stretched on for what felt like hours, but was probably only 30 seconds. Mom was tapping her pen against her checkbook. Aunt Sharon was studying my coffee table like it held the secrets of the universe, and I was trying to find the courage to say what I knew I had to say. No.
The word came out quieter than I'd intended, but it hung in the air between us like a challenge. Mom's head snapped up. Excuse me? I said, no. I'm not giving you my tuition money for Riley's wedding. Aunt Sharon's face crumpled, and for a moment I felt like the worst person in the world. But then I remembered the 4:15 a.m. alarms, the aching feet, the months of isolation and exhaustion, and I straightened my shoulders. Jessica, we've already discussed this, Mom said, her voice tight with barely controlled anger. This isn't a negotiation. You're right, it's not. It's my money, and I'm saying no. Your cousin needs this money more than you need another semester of school. That's not for you to decide. Mom stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against my hardwood floor. I can't believe I raised such a selfish daughter. Do you have any idea what you're doing to this family? The guilt hit me like a physical blow, but I forced myself to stay seated, to stay calm. I'm protecting my future. You're destroying your relationships with the people who matter most. The people who matter most wouldn't ask me to destroy my dreams for their convenience. Aunt Sharon finally looked up, tears streaming down her face. Jessica, please. I know this is hard, but Riley's been planning this wedding for 2 years. She's already had to compromise on so many things. The dress, the flowers, the photographer. The venue is the one thing she refuses to settle on, and I can't bear to watch her heart break again. I felt my resolve wavering. Sharon wasn't manipulating me the way Mom was. She was just a mother trying to help her daughter. Aunt Sharon, I understand how difficult this is, but I've been planning culinary school for even longer.
This isn't just about money. It's about my entire life path. But you're young, honey. You have time to try again. Riley's 32, and this is probably her only chance at the wedding she's always dreamed of. Why is it probably her only chance? She's marrying someone who loves her, someone who would marry her in a courthouse if that's what it took. When did the venue become more important than the marriage? The question seemed to catch Sharon off guard. She opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again, looking lost. But Mom had no such hesitation. "Don't you dare lecture us about what's important, Jessica. You're sitting here prioritizing your own selfish desires over your family's needs, and you have the audacity to question our values?" "Mom, stop calling me selfish. There's nothing selfish about wanting to use money I earned for the purpose I saved it for. There's everything selfish about refusing to help your family when you have the means to do so. And there's everything entitled about expecting someone else to sacrifice their dreams for your convenience." The words came out harsher than I'd intended, and I immediately saw the flash of hurt in Mom's eyes, but she quickly covered it with anger. "Convenience? You think watching your cousin suffer is convenient? You think begging for money from my own daughter is convenient? I think assuming you could make decisions about my money without consulting me is convenient. I think emotional manipulation is convenient. I think calling me selfish instead of respecting my decision is convenient." Mom's face went white, then red. "Emotional manipulation? I'm trying to teach you about family responsibility, something I apparently failed to do properly. You taught me to work hard for what I want. You taught me to save money and plan for the future. You taught me to be independent. Now you're angry because I learned those lessons too well. I taught you to care about other people. I do care about other people, but caring doesn't mean bankrupting myself for their wants." "Wants?" Aunt Sharon interjected, her voice rising. "Jessica, this isn't a want. This is my daughter's wedding day, the most important day of her life. And culinary school isn't important to me? It's not the same thing." "Why not? Because it's education instead of a party?" "Because it's just school. You can go to school anytime, but Riley can't have another wedding." "Actually, she could have another wedding. People get remarried all the time. But if I miss this culinary program, there's no guarantee I'll ever get another chance." The room fell silent again, but this time the silence felt different, charged with real anger instead of just disappointment. Mom sat back down, but her posture was rigid. "Jessica, I'm going to give you one more chance to do the right thing here." "The right thing according to who?" "According to anyone with a heart. According to anyone who understands what family means." I looked at these two women I'd loved my entire life, and I realized that somewhere along the way, their definition of family had become conditional. I was a good family member when I was compliant, generous, willing to sacrifice. But the moment I prioritized my own needs, I became selfish and heartless. "Mom, let me ask you something. If the situation was reversed, if Riley had saved money for something important to her and I needed it for a wedding, would you tell her to give it up?" Mom didn't answer immediately, which was enough. "You wouldn't, would you? Because Riley's always been the responsible one, the one who makes good choices, and I've always been the one who's supposed to fix everyone else's problems." "That's not true."
Isn't it? When Marcus needed money for his car, who did you ask? When Aunt Sharon couldn't afford Riley's class trip, who did you ask? When Grandma needed help with her medical bills, who worked extra shifts to contribute? It's always me, Mom. And when I finally save money for something I want, suddenly I'm selfish for not sharing? You've always been the generous one, Jessica. That's why this is so disappointing. Maybe I've been the generous one because I never felt like I had a choice. Maybe I've been giving and giving because I thought that's what I had to do to be loved. The words surprised me as much as they surprised them. I hadn't planned to say that, but once it was out there, I realized how true it was. Somewhere deep down, I'd always believed that my worth in the family was tied to my willingness to sacrifice for others. "Nobody ever asked you to sacrifice anything," Mom said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. "You didn't have to ask. The expectation was always there. Be the good daughter, be helpful, be generous, don't make waves, and God forbid I should ever put my own needs first." Aunt Sharon was crying harder now, and I felt terrible about that. This wasn't really her fault. She was just a desperate mother trying to help her daughter. But I couldn't let guilt override my judgment anymore. "Jessica," Sharon said through her tears, "what am I supposed to tell Riley?" "Tell her I'm sorry about the venue situation, and I hope she finds a solution. But tell her that the solution can't be my tuition money." "She's going to be devastated." "She'll be disappointed, not devastated. There's a difference." "You don't understand how much this means to her. And you don't understand how much culinary school means to me." Mom stood up again, and this time she grabbed her purse. "Fine, Jessica, you've made your choice clear, but don't expect us to pretend this doesn't change things." "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means actions have consequences. It means when you choose yourself over your family remembers." The threat was unmistakable, and it hit me harder than I expected. But I forced myself to stay strong. If loving me is conditional on my willingness to give up my dreams, then maybe we need to examine what kind of love that really is. Mom's face went completely white. "How dare you question my love for you?" "I'm not questioning your love. I'm questioning whether you love me for who I am or for what I'm willing to do for others." "I'm leaving," Mom said, her voice shaking with fury. "Sharon, are you coming?" Aunt Sharon looked between us like she was watching a car accident. "Rebecca, maybe we should all calm down and—" "No, I'm done. Jessica has made her position clear. She values money more than family, and there's nothing left to discuss." "That's not what I said." "It's what you meant." Mom headed toward the door, then turned back. "Don't call me until you're ready to apologize and make this right." "Apologize for what? For working hard and wanting to use my own money for its intended purpose?" "Apologize for being heartless." The door slammed behind them, rattling the pictures on my wall. I stood in my suddenly quiet apartment, shaking with adrenaline and the aftermath of confrontation. Whiskers emerged from under the bed and rubbed against my legs, purring softly. I picked him up and sank back onto the couch, trying to process what had just happened. I'd stood up to my mother for the first time in my adult life, and it felt both liberating and terrifying. I'd protected my future, but possibly at the cost of my family relationships. The silence in my apartment felt different now. Not peaceful, but empty. Within an hour, my phone started buzzing. First it was Riley, crying and begging me to reconsider. Then it was Marcus, confused about what had happened, but clearly having been told his sister was being unreasonable. Then came a series of text messages from various cousins and family friends, all with variations of the same theme. I was being selfish and should help Riley. The family phone tree had activated, and I was being systematically isolated. By evening, I had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages, ranging from disappointed to furious to pleading. The general consensus seemed to be that I was a terrible person who cared more about school than family. Only one message was different. It was from my grandmother, Mom's grandmother, who was 92 and usually stayed out of family drama. "Jessica, honey, I heard about the situation with Riley's wedding. I want you to know that I'm proud of you for working so hard to save for your education. Your grandfather would be proud too. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for pursuing your dreams. Love, Grandma." I cried when I read that message, the first tears I'd shed all day. At least one person in my family understood what this meant to me.
But as the evening wore on and the messages kept coming, I started to doubt myself. Maybe I was being selfish. Maybe a good person would sacrifice their dreams for a cousin's wedding. Maybe I was making a huge mistake that would destroy my family relationships forever. I went to bed that night with my phone turned off, but I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying the confrontation with Mom, wondering if there had been another way to handle it, wondering if I had been too harsh, too stubborn, too unwilling to compromise. By morning, I'd made a decision that I thought might save both my future and my family relationships. Sunday morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I'd spent most of the night staring at the ceiling, alternating between righteous anger and crushing guilt. By 7 a.m., I'd convinced myself that maybe there was a middle ground that could save everyone.
I called Riley first, before I could lose my nerve. Jess? Her voice was hoarse, like she'd been crying all night. Hey, Riley. I've been thinking about everything, and I want to propose something different. Oh my God, does that mean you'll help us? Maybe, but not the way Mom suggested. What if I loaned you half the money? $4,000. You could combine that with whatever you and David have saved, maybe get a smaller loan from the bank, and make it work? There was silence on the other end, and I could practically hear Riley doing mental calculations. Jess, the venue deposit alone is $8,500. Even if we put together every penny David and I have, plus the $4,000 from you, we'd still be about $2,000 short. What about David's parents? Didn't you say they were helping with the honeymoon? They've already contributed $3,000, and David's too proud to ask for more. His dad just had surgery, and their insurance didn't cover everything. I felt my compromise crumbling before it had even been fully formed. What about postponing the wedding until you can save more money? We can't postpone it, Jess. David's been transferred to Seattle for work starting in January. If we don't get married in October, we'd have to wait until he's settled in his new job, and who knows when that would be? We might end up doing long distance for months. Every potential solution seemed to dead end into the same conclusion. They needed all of my money, or the wedding couldn't happen the way they wanted it to. Riley, I understand the pressure you're under, but you have to understand mine too. If I give you this money and something goes wrong with the repayment, I lose my chance at culinary school. Nothing will go wrong, I promise. You can't promise that. What if your mom's loan gets rejected? What if you and David have an emergency and can't pay me back right away? What if the country club has hidden fees you didn't know about? Then we'll figure something else out. But by then, it might be too late for me. I could hear Riley starting to cry again. Jess, I'm begging you. This is the most important thing that's ever happened to me. And culinary school is the most important thing that's ever happened to me. It's not the same thing. Why does everyone keep saying that? Why is your dream more valid than mine? Because mine involves David too. It's not just about me. My dream involves my entire future. It affects everyone I'll ever employ, every customer I'll serve, every person whose life might be touched by my work. You're making it sound bigger than it is. And you're making your wedding sound bigger than it is. At the end of the day, Riley, it's one party. A beautiful, meaningful party, but still just one day. The line went quiet except for Riley's soft crying. You really won't help me, she finally said. I offered to help you. You turned down my compromise. Half the money isn't help, it's a tease. It just makes everything more complicated. Then find another solution. There is no other solution, Jess. You know that. You're the only person in our family who has that kind of money available. Then maybe the solution is to accept that you can't have the wedding you originally wanted. I can't believe you just said that. Riley, people get married in courthouse ceremonies every day and are just as happy.
People get married in their parents' backyards and public parks and community centers. The marriage is what matters, not the venue. Easy for you to say, you've never been engaged. That's a low blow. It's the truth. You don't understand what this means because you've never been in love the way David and I are in love. Now I was getting angry again. Don't you dare diminish my understanding of love just because I'm not planning a wedding. And don't act like your love is somehow more valid or important than anyone else's. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. Just like Mom meant it when she called me selfish. You're all so convinced that I'm some cold, heartless person because I won't sacrifice my future for your party. It's not a party, it's a wedding. And it's not just school, it's my career. We were both shouting now, years of unspoken resentments bubbling to the surface. You know what, Jessica? Maybe Mom was right. Maybe you are selfish. The Jessica that I grew up with would never have hesitated to help the family. The Jessica you grew up with was a people pleaser who didn't know how to say no. Maybe it's time you met the real me. I don't like the real you very much. The words hit me like a physical slap. This was my cousin, the girl who'd been like a sister to me for 24 years, and she was telling me she didn't like who I really was. Well, I don't like what you become when you don't get your way. I become desperate because I'm trying to save the most important day of my life. And I become protective because I'm trying to save my actual life. Your life won't end if you don't go to culinary school this semester. And your life won't end if you don't have your dream wedding. You're impossible. And you're entitled. The line went dead. Riley had hung up on me. I sat staring at my phone, shaking with anger and hurt. In less than 24 hours, I'd destroyed my relationships with both my mother and my cousin. For what? For the right to use my money for my own goals? The answer was yes. That's exactly what this was about.
I spent the rest of Sunday in a haze of doubt and determination. I cleaned my apartment obsessively, reorganized my closet, and meal prepped for the upcoming week. Anything to keep my hands busy and my mind occupied. Monday morning came with a return to my normal work schedule, and I was grateful for the distraction. At Murphy's Diner, Carl noticed my mood immediately. "You look like someone stole your favorite spatula," he said, refilling my coffee cup during a brief lull in the breakfast rush. "Family drama," I said, not wanting to get into details. "The worst kind. Blood relatives think they own you just because you share DNA. Something like that. Well, for what it's worth, you've been busting your ass to save for that cooking school. Anyone who wants to mess with that doesn't have your best interests at heart." Carl's gruff support meant more to me than he probably realized. At least someone understood what I was trying to accomplish. At Fashion Forward that evening, Amanda also picked up on my mood. "Everything okay? You seem distracted." "Just some family stuff. Nothing I can't handle." "Well, if you need to talk, I'm here." I went through my own family money drama a few years ago when my sister wanted me to co-sign for a car loan she couldn't afford. "What did you do?" Said no, and didn't speak to her for 6 months. But eventually she realized I was right, and now our relationship is stronger because she knows I'll be honest with her, even when it's hard. "Did you ever doubt your decision?" "Every single day for those 6 months. But looking back, it was the best thing I ever did for both of us. Sometimes loving someone means not enabling their bad choices." That conversation stayed with me as I drove home. Was I enabling bad choices by refusing to fund Riley's dream wedding? Or was I preventing them by not teaching her that other people would always bail her out of financial problems? Tuesday brought a new development. Marcus called. "Jess, what the hell is going on? Mom called me crying last night saying you refused to help Riley and that you'd been horrible to both her and Aunt Sharon." "Did she tell you what she was asking me to do?" "She said Riley needed help with wedding expenses and you had the money but wouldn't share it." "I asked you to give up my entire culinary school fund, Marcus, all $10,000 of it." There was a long pause. "Oh, she didn't mention it that much."
or that it was money I'd saved specifically for my education. Yeah, she left that part out too. She made it sound like I had extra money sitting around and were just being stingy. I worked double shifts for 4 months to save that money. I haven't had a day off since March. Jesus, Jess, I had no idea. So now you understand why I said no. I mean, yeah, but also it's Riley's wedding. Can't you go to cooking school next year? Even Marcus, who now understood the full situation, still thought my dreams should be secondary to Riley's wedding. The family programming ran deep. Marcus, what if someone asked you to give up a full semester of college tuition for a family member's party? It's not a party, it's a wedding. It's still one day versus an entire career path. But she's family. And what am I? That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. You all keep acting like I'm not family, like my goals don't matter because they're mine instead of someone else's. Nobody thinks your goals don't matter. Then why is everyone so willing to sacrifice them for Riley's goals?
Marcus didn't have an answer for that. Wednesday brought an unexpected visitor to Murphy's Diner. I was wiping down tables during the afternoon lull when I looked up to see David Morrison standing by the hostess station, looking uncomfortable in his khakis and button-down shirt. "David, what are you doing here?" "I was hoping we could talk. Do you have a few minutes?" I glanced at Carl, who nodded and waved me toward a corner booth. David and I sat across from each other, and I could see the stress lines around his eyes. "Riley doesn't know I'm here," he said immediately. "She'd probably kill me if she knew." "Okay." "Jessica, I need you to know that this whole wedding venue thing wasn't my idea. I was perfectly happy with the original hall they booked. It was simple, affordable, and Riley seemed excited about it." "What changed?" "Her mom found this country club place and started showing Riley pictures. Suddenly, nothing else was good enough. The original venue went from perfect to embarrassing overnight." I felt a flicker of hope. "So you'd be okay with a simpler wedding?" "I'd be okay with a courthouse wedding. I'd just want to marry Riley. But she's got this vision now, and I can't talk her out of it without looking like I don't care about her happiness." "David, why are you telling me this?" "Because I don't think it's fair to ask you to give up your education money for our wedding. When Riley told me how much you'd saved and what you'd sacrificed to save it, I felt sick." "Have you told Riley how you feel?" "I've tried, but she just cries and says I don't understand how important this is to her. And then Sharon gets involved, and your mom gets involved, and suddenly I'm the bad guy for suggesting we scale back." "So what are you asking me to do?" "I don't know. I guess I just wanted you to know that not everyone in this situation thinks you're being unreasonable. If I were in your position, I'd probably make the same choice." "That means a lot, David. Really. I love Riley, but I also think she's being selfish about this. The problem is, I'm the only one who seems to think that, and I can't say it without causing a huge fight." "What if you did cause a huge fight? What if you told her you're not comfortable with the expensive venue?" "Then she'd probably call off the engagement." "Would she really?" "I don't know, but I'm not willing to risk it. I'd rather have an expensive wedding than no wedding at all." David's honesty was refreshing, but it also made me sad. He was so afraid of losing Riley that he was willing to enable her unrealistic expectations, even when it meant asking me to sacrifice my dreams. "David, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Do you think Riley would still marry you if you couldn't afford the country club wedding?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I hope so. But honestly, I'm not sure anymore. This whole venue thing has brought out a side I'd never seen before." "What do you mean?" "She's become obsessed with having everything perfect, with showing off to her friends, with proving that she's successful and happy. It's like the actual marriage has become secondary to the wedding performance." "Have you talked to her about that?"
I've tried, but she just says I don't understand the pressure she's under from her friends who've had these elaborate weddings. She feels like she needs to compete. And you're willing to start your marriage in debt to help her compete? What choice do I have? You could set boundaries. You could say no to expenses you can't afford. Easy for you to say. You're not the one who has to live with her if I disappoint her. And there it was, the real problem. Everyone was so afraid of disappointing Riley that they were willing to sacrifice anything to keep her happy, including my future. David, I'm not giving her the money. I know, and I don't blame you. But you're not going to stand up to her either. No, I'm not. Then you're part of the problem. He flinched but didn't argue. Maybe I am, but I love her, and I'm choosing the path that keeps us together. Even if it means pressuring me to give up my dreams. I'm not pressuring you. I'm telling you that I understand your position. But you're still marrying her, which enables her behavior. Yes, I am. At least he was honest about it. Thursday brought the news I'd been dreading. Aunt Sharon called to tell me that the bank had rejected her loan application. My credit score wasn't as good as I thought it was. There were some medical bills I'd forgotten about that went to collections a few years ago. I'm sorry, Sharon. Jessica, this means we have no way to pay you back quickly. But I promise, if you help us now, David and I will work out a payment plan. We'll pay you back over the next year with interest. A year? Sharon, I need to pay my tuition in 10 days. I know, sweetie, but maybe you could defer for one semester, just until we can get you the money back? I already asked about deferring. They can't hold my spot. Well, maybe you could reapply for the spring semester. There's no guarantee I'd be accepted again.
But there's a chance, right? And this is definitely Riley's only chance at her dream wedding. I realized then that nothing had really changed. They were still asking me to risk my future for their certainty. The only difference was that now they were being more honest about the timeline. Sharon, I can't do it. I'm sorry, but I just can't. Jessica, please, I'm begging you, as Riley's mother, don't let her wedding be ruined because of money. I'm not ruining her wedding. I'm protecting my education. It's the same thing. No, it's not. Friday afternoon, Mom called. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Jessica, I want you to know that I've talked to Pastor Williams about the situation. Pastor Williams was the minister at the church Mom attended sporadically. This was clearly going to be an attempt at moral authority. Okay. He agrees that family should come first and that sometimes we're called to make sacrifices for the people we love. Did you tell him the whole story? I told him that your cousin needed financial help for her wedding and you were refusing to provide it despite having the means to do so. Did you tell him it was my education money? I told him it was money you had saved. Mom, you presented the situation in a way that made me look bad. That's not fair. I presented the facts. You presented selected facts. There's a difference. Pastor Williams says that when we put our own desires ahead of our family's needs, we're acting in a selfish manner that doesn't reflect Christian values. And what does Pastor Williams say about people who pressure their children to give up their education funds? That's not what this is about. That's exactly what this is about. The conversation devolved from there, with Mom becoming increasingly religious in her arguments and me becoming increasingly frustrated with the moral manipulation. By Saturday night, I was emotionally exhausted, but resolved. I'd been tested by everyone I loved, and I'd held my ground. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't fun, but I knew I was making the right choice. Sunday would mark exactly 1 week since this whole nightmare began. 1 week since I learned that my family's love came with conditions I'd never known existed. But it would also mark 1 week of me standing up for myself and my dreams, possibly for the first time in my adult life. And despite all the pain and conflict, that felt like progress. Monday morning of the second week brought an unexpected ally.
I was restocking napkin dispensers at Murphy's when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Hi, Jessica. This is Sarah Chan from Fashion Forward Corporate. Amanda mentioned you're saving for culinary school. I'd like to talk to you about our employee education scholarship program. Can you call me? I'd never heard of any scholarship program, but I called during my break anyway. Sarah turned out to be the regional HR director, and what she told me, it changed everything. We have a partnership with several culinary schools in Ohio, she explained. The program covers up to $5,000 in tuition for employees who've been with us more than 6 months and maintain good performance reviews. I had no idea this existed. Most people don't. Amanda brought your situation to my attention, and when I looked at your file, you're exactly the kind of employee we want to support. You've never missed a shift, you've taken on extra responsibilities, and your customer service scores are excellent. What would I need to do to apply? The application is pretty straightforward. You'd need to provide proof of enrollment, maintain your current position through the program, and agree to work for Fashion Forward for at least 1 year after graduation. Think of it as an investment in your future and ours. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the Murphy's parking lot, crying with relief. $5,000 wouldn't cover my entire tuition, but it would make keeping my savings much more feasible. I could contribute $5,000 of my own money, get $5,000 from the scholarship, and still have a small emergency buffer. For the first time in over a week, I felt like I could breathe. That afternoon, I called Riley with what I thought would be good news for both of us. Riley, I found a solution that might work for everyone. You changed your mind? Her voice immediately brightened. Not exactly, but I found a scholarship that covers half my tuition. That means I could loan you $5,000 without jeopardizing my education. The silence stretched so long, I thought the call had dropped. Riley? Are you there? $5,000 isn't enough, Jess. We need the full amount. But $5,000 plus what you and David have saved, plus maybe a smaller bank loan? We already went over this. The math doesn't work. Have you looked into other venues? Maybe something less expensive? I'm not settling for less than what I deserve. The entitlement in her voice hit me like a slap. What do you deserve? Riley, you deserve a loving marriage to a good man. Everything else is just decoration. Easy for you to say, you've never planned a wedding. And it's easy for you to say, I should give up my dreams. You've never worked for anything the way I worked for this money. That's not fair, isn't it? Riley, when's the last time you worked more than 40 hours a week? When's the last time you sacrificed anything significant for a goal? I've been planning this wedding for 2 years. Planning isn't the same as working. Planning isn't the same as saving every penny and giving up every comfort.
You're being cruel. I'm being honest. There's a difference. She hung up on me again. That evening, I filled out the scholarship application, feeling lighter than I had in days. Whether or not my family supported my decision, I was moving forward with my life. Tuesday brought a visit I wasn't expecting. I was folding sweaters at Fashion Forward when I looked up to see Grandma Ruth making her way slowly through the store, leaning heavily on her walker. "Grandma, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my granddaughter," she said, settling into a chair near the fitting rooms. "We need to talk." I glanced around to make sure Amanda wasn't watching, then sat on a nearby stool. "How did you even get here?" "I took a taxi. Cost me $43, but some conversations are worth the expense." "Grandma, you didn't need to come all the way here." "Yes, I did. Your mother is spreading stories around the family about what happened, and I wanted to hear your side before I made any judgments." "What kind of stories?" "That you're being selfish and heartless, that you have money sitting around and won't help your cousin in her time of need, that you've changed and become materialistic." "And what do you think?" Grandma Ruth studied my face with the sharp eyes that had seen 92 years of human behavior. "I think your mother is scared." "Scared of what?" "Scared that she raised a daughter who's stronger than she is. scared that you're not going to be the family doormat anymore, scared that if you start standing up for yourself, other people might start doing it too. I never thought about it that way. Your mother has been managing this family through guilt and manipulation for years, Jessica. It worked when you were all children who depended on her for everything, but you're adults now, and she's having trouble adjusting to that reality. So you think I'm doing the right thing? I think you're doing the necessary thing. Tell me about this culinary school. For the next 20 minutes, I told Grandma about my dreams of opening a bakery, about the months of double shifts, about the acceptance letter and the looming deadline. She listened without interrupting, nodding occasionally. "Your grandfather would have been proud of you," she said when I finished. "He worked 3 jobs to put your mother through nursing school, and she's forgotten what that kind of sacrifice looks like." Mom went to nursing school? Before she switched to dental hygiene, yes, and she never would have made it without your grandfather's support. The irony of her current position is apparently lost on her. Did Grandpa ever regret helping her? Never. But he also never had to choose between his own future and hers. That's what makes your situation different. Grandma reached into her purse and pulled out an envelope. "I want to give you something." "Grandma, you don't need to—" "It's not money, child. Open it." Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before, showing a young man in an apron standing in front of a small bakery. The sign above the door read, "Miller's Sweet Treats." "That's your great-grandfather, my father. He owned a bakery in downtown Cleveland from 1945 to 1967. Best cinnamon rolls in the city, according to everyone who tried them." I stared at the photo, seeing my own eyes looking back at me from this ancestor I'd never known about. "He died when your mother was 5, so she doesn't remember him well. But baking is in your blood, Jessica. This isn't just some random career choice. It's a calling that's been waiting in your family for 3 generations." Why didn't anyone ever tell me about him? Because your mother was always focused on practical careers, stable jobs with good benefits. She didn't see the value in creative pursuits. But I see the way your face lights up when you talk about pastry making, and it's the same look your great-grandfather had when he talked about his recipes. "Can I keep this?" "It's yours, and so is this." She handed me another envelope, this one thicker. "Grandma, you don't need to—" "It's $500, not enough to change your financial situation, but enough to cover your textbooks or supplies. Consider it an investment from one generation to the next." I was crying now, overwhelmed by this unexpected support from the one person in my family who seemed to understand what I was trying to accomplish. "Thank you, this means everything to me." What means everything to me is knowing that our family's legacy of hard work and determination isn't dying with my generation. You represent the best of what your great-grandfather and grandfather taught us. After Grandma left, I carried the photograph with me for the rest of my shift, looking at it whenever I needed to remember why this dream mattered so much. Wednesday brought news that the family drama was escalating beyond anything I anticipated. Marcus called me during my lunch break, sounding stressed. "Jess, Mom's organizing some kind of family intervention for this weekend." "A what?" "She's called Aunt Sharon, Uncle Pete, Cousin Michelle, even Great-Aunt Dorothy. She wants everyone to come talk to you about your attitude problem." "She's bringing Great-Aunt Dorothy into this? She's 87 years old." "Apparently, she thinks if enough family members tell you you're wrong, you'll change your mind." "And what do you think about this intervention?" "I think it's crazy, but I also think you should be prepared for it." "Are you going to be there?"
Mom expects me to be. But Jess, I want you to know that I've been thinking about what you said, and I understand your position better now. Really? I talked to my roommate about it. His parents made him give up his spring break trip to pay for his sister's car repairs, and he's still resentful about it 2 years later. He said family shouldn't mean one person always sacrifices for everyone else. I'm glad someone else sees it that way. I still think Riley's situation sucks, but I also think it's not fair to ask you to fix it. Will you tell Mom that? I don't know. She's pretty worked up about this whole thing. I've never seen her so angry. She's angry because I'm not following the script she wrote for my life. What do you mean? I mean, she had me figured out as the family helper, the one who would always say yes and fix everyone's problems. Now that I'm not playing that role anymore, she doesn't know how to deal with me. Do you think she'll get over it? I hope so. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. Even if everyone at this intervention tells me I'm wrong, even if the whole family turns against me, I'm not changing my mind. I figured as much. This isn't about being stubborn. It's about recognizing that I have value too, that my dreams matter too. And if our family can't accept that, then maybe I need to find a new definition of family. Thursday brought an unexpected encounter at the grocery store. I was picking up ingredients for the week when I ran into David's mother, Patricia Morrison, in the produce section. "Jessica, dear, how are you holding up?" I was surprised by the warmth in her voice. "I'm doing okay, Mrs. Morrison. How are the wedding preparations going?" That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. David told me about the situation with the venue and the money. Oh. I braced myself for another lecture about family obligations. I want you to know that I think you're making the right choice. You do? Absolutely. When David told me how much money they were asking you to give up and what you'd sacrifice to save it, I was appalled. No young woman should be expected to give up her education for someone else's wedding. Have you told Riley and David how you feel? I've tried to talk to David about scaling back the wedding, but he's so afraid of disappointing Riley that he won't listen. And frankly, I think Riley has lost sight of what's really important here. What do you mean? I mean, she had me figured out as the family helper, the one who would always say yes and fix everyone's problems. Now that I'm not playing that role anymore, she doesn't know how to deal with me. Do you think she'll get over it? I hope so. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. Even if everyone at this intervention tells me I'm wrong, even if the whole family turns against me, I'm not changing my mind. I figured as much. This isn't about being stubborn. It's about recognizing that I have value too, that my dreams matter too. And if our family can't accept that, then maybe I need to find a new definition of family. Thursday brought an unexpected encounter at the grocery store. I was picking up ingredients for the week when I ran into David's mother, Patricia Morrison, in the produce section. "Jessica, dear, how are you holding up?" I was surprised by the warmth in her voice. "I'm doing okay, Mrs. Morrison. How are the wedding preparations going?" That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. David told me about the situation with the venue and the money. Oh. I braced myself for another lecture about family obligations. I want you to know that I think you're making the right choice. You do? Absolutely. When David told me how much money they were asking you to give up and what you'd sacrifice to save it, I was appalled. No young woman should be expected to give up her education for someone else's wedding. Have you told Riley and David how you feel? I've tried to talk to David about scaling back the wedding, but he's so afraid of disappointing Riley that he won't listen. And frankly, I think Riley has lost sight of what's really important here. What do you mean? I mean, she had me figured out as the family helper, the one who would always say yes and fix everyone's problems. Now that I'm not playing that role anymore, she doesn't know how to deal with me.
Mom expects me to be. But Jess, I want you to know that I've been thinking about what you said, and I understand your position better now. Really? I talked to my roommate about it. His parents made him give up his spring break trip to pay for his sister's car repairs, and he's still resentful about it 2 years later. He said family shouldn't mean one person always sacrifices for everyone else. I'm glad someone else sees it that way. I still think Riley's situation sucks,
But I also think it's not fair to ask you to fix it. Will you tell Mom that? I don't know. She's pretty worked up about this whole thing. I've never seen her so angry. She's angry because I'm not following the script she wrote for my life. What do you mean? I mean, she had me figured out as the family helper, the one who would always say yes and fix everyone's problems. Now that I'm not playing that role anymore, she doesn't know how to deal with me. Do you think she'll get over it? I hope so. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. Even if everyone at this intervention tells me I'm wrong, even if the whole family turns against me, I'm not changing my mind. I figured as much. This isn't about being stubborn. It's about recognizing that I have value too, that my dreams matter too. And if our family can't accept that, then maybe I need to find a new definition of family. Thursday brought an unexpected encounter at the grocery store. I was picking up ingredients for the week when I ran into David's mother, Patricia Morrison, in the produce section. "Jessica, dear, how are you holding up?" I was surprised by the warmth in her voice. "I'm doing okay, Mrs. Morrison. How are the wedding preparations going?" "That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about. David told me about the situation with the venue and the money." "Oh." I braced myself for another lecture about family obligations. "I want you to know that I think you're making the right choice." "You do?" "Absolutely. When David told me how much money they were asking you to give up and what you'd sacrifice to save it, I was appalled. No young woman should be expected to give up her education for someone else's wedding." "Have you told Riley and David how you feel?" "I've tried to talk to David about scaling back the wedding, but he's so afraid of disappointing Riley that he won't listen. And frankly, I think Riley has lost sight of what's really important here." "What do you mean?" "I mean, she's so focused on having the perfect wedding that she's forgotten she's supposed to be planning a marriage. The venue, the flowers, the dress, none of that matters if the foundation isn't solid." "Do you think their foundation is solid?" Patricia was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "I think David loves Riley very much, but I'm not sure Riley loves David as much as she loves the idea of being a bride." "That's a pretty serious concern." "It is. And asking you to sacrifice your future for her fantasy wedding just reinforces my worries about her priorities." "Are you going to say anything to them?" "I don't know. David's an adult and he has to make his own choices. But I wanted you to know that at least one person in this situation thinks you're being reasonable." That conversation stayed with me as I finished my shopping. If David's own mother had concerns about Riley's priorities, maybe my instincts about this whole situation were right. Friday evening, I decided to take control of the narrative before the weekend intervention. I wrote a long email to every family member I could think of, explaining my side of the story in detail. I included information about my work schedule, my savings goals, the culinary school program, and the timeline pressures I was facing. I also included the scholarship information, explaining that I'd found a way to help Riley without completely sacrificing my own future, but that she'd rejected the compromise.
The email ended with this paragraph. "I love this family, and I love Riley, but love doesn't mean sacrificing my entire future for someone else's wants. I've worked harder for this money than I've ever worked for anything in my life, and I've earned the right to use it for its intended purpose. If that makes me selfish in your eyes, then I guess I'll have to live with that. But I won't live with the regret of giving up my dreams because I was too afraid to disappoint people." I sent the email to 15 family members and then turned off my phone. Whatever happened next, at least everyone would have the full story before they passed judgment. Saturday morning arrived with a sense of impending doom. The intervention was scheduled for 2 p.m. at Mom's house, and I'd spent most of the night debating whether to show up at all. In the end, I decided to face them. Running away wouldn't solve anything, and I'd come too far to back down now. I arrived at Mom's house exactly on time, wearing my best dress and carrying the photograph of my great-grandfather's bakery. If I was going to defend my dreams, I wanted to look like someone whose dreams were worth defending. The living room was packed. Mom, Aunt Sharon, Uncle Pete, Cousin Michelle, Great-Aunt Dorothy, and even a few family friends I barely recognized.
They'd arranged the chairs in a circle, like some kind of therapeutic intervention for drug addicts. "Jessica," Mom said as I walked in, "thank you for coming. We're all here because we love you and we're concerned about the choices you're making. And I'm here because I love you all too, but I'm not changing my mind." The battle for my future was about to begin. The family intervention was everything I'd expected and worse. 15 people crammed into Mom's living room, all armed with reasons why I should give up my future for Riley's wedding. Great Aunt Dorothy quoted scripture, Uncle Pete called me heartless, and Cousin Michelle actually suggested I was having some kind of mental breakdown. But as each person spoke, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling smaller, I felt stronger. Their arguments revealed how little they understood about my sacrifice, my dreams, or even basic fairness. When Uncle Pete finished his lecture about family loyalty, I stood up and pulled out the photograph Grandma had given me. This is Thomas Miller, my great-grandfather. He owned a bakery in Cleveland for 22 years. I looked directly at Mom. "Why didn't you ever tell me about him?" Mom shifted uncomfortably. "It was a long time ago, Jessica. It's not relevant." "It's completely relevant. Baking isn't some random career choice for me. It's continuing a family legacy you never bothered to mention." Great Aunt Dorothy leaned forward to see the photo. "Thomas Miller. I remember him. He made the most incredible wedding cakes in the city." "Wedding cakes," I repeated, letting the irony sink in. So, my great-grandfather would have understood the importance of both weddings and following your passion for baking. The room went quiet. Finally, Dorothy spoke again. "Jessica, dear, I think I owe you an apology. I came here thinking you were being selfish, but now I'm wondering if we're the ones being unreasonable." "Dorothy, don't encourage this," Mom snapped. "Rebecca, the girl has worked 4 months of double shifts to save for her education. That shows character, not selfishness." The intervention dissolved into arguments, with the family splitting into factions. In the chaos, I quietly walked out. I'd said what I needed to say. Mom followed me to my car. "Jessica, wait. I'm done arguing." "Are you really going to let Riley's wedding be ruined over money?" "I'm not ruining anything. I offered her half my savings, $5,000. She turned it down because it wasn't enough. That's her choice, not mine." "When did you become so stubborn?" "When I realized that being a doormat wasn't the same as being loved." Mom had no response to that. 2 weeks later, I submitted my tuition payment and scholarship application on the same day. The scholarship covered half my costs, and I kept a small emergency fund. For the first time in my adult life, I felt truly in control of my destiny. Riley's wedding happened without me. She'd found a park pavilion for $500 and created something beautiful with decorations instead of an expensive venue. According to Marcus, it was actually more personal and meaningful than the country club would have been. More importantly, David had finally stood up during the venue crisis. When they couldn't afford the country club, he told Riley they needed to find alternatives, and she'd had to face reality. Their relationship had actually grown stronger through solving problems together. 3 months into culinary school, I was thriving. Advanced pastry techniques, bread making, chocolate work, everything I dreamed of learning. The program was challenging but perfect for me. Then, Riley appeared at my apartment one Tuesday evening, holding a small, wrapped box. "Hi, Jess. Can we talk?" We sat in my living room, the tension thick between us. "I came to apologize," she said. "Not for asking for help, but for how I acted when you said no. You were right, I was being entitled." "What changed your mind?" "Planning the rest of the wedding without expecting someone else to fix everything. When David and I had to actually solve our own problems, I realized how much I'd been depending on other people to make my dreams happen." She handed me the box.
Inside was a wooden spoon engraved with Miller's Sweet Treats. Grandma Ruth told me about your great-grandfather. I thought you should have something connecting you to that legacy. I started crying. This gesture meant more than any apology could. Riley, thank you. This is perfect. I'm sorry it took me so long to understand. You look happier in your culinary school photos than I've seen you in years. I am happier. I finally get why you couldn't give that up. This isn't just school, it's who you're meant to be. 6 months later, Mom visited my apartment to see my culinary portfolio. When I showed her photos of elaborate wedding cakes I'd learned to create, she cried. "I'm proud of you," she said. "I was wrong to ask you to give this up." We both learned something from this experience. I learned that loving someone means supporting their dreams, not sacrificing them for someone else's convenience. Today, I graduate next month at the top of my class. I have a job lined up at Cleveland's premier restaurant, and I'm saving to open my own bakery. Riley and David are happily married and recently became debt-free through budgeting and hard work. The wooden spoon sits on my counter next to my great-grandfather's photo, reminding me daily that some dreams are worth fighting for, even when the people you love are on the other side of the battle. I kept my $10,000 and discovered something more valuable than money: self-respect, boundaries, and the knowledge that my dreams mattered just as much as anyone else's. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is show them you're strong enough to stand up for yourself.
Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.